In this episode of Homemaker Living, we're going to take a look at what's new in the garden this year and some upcoming projects. When we moved to this property, my plan was to put in a good-sized garden. In our last home, I had a small little garden that had about 7 raised beds in it and another area that was outside of that for most of my berries. And I really wanted to upscale that here so that I could produce much more fresh food to eat as well as gardening organically. And so when we planned out the garden, we put it in kind of the middle chunk of our property here in the backyard, and it is quite spaced out. So what we ended up doing is putting in 31 raised beds. I know that sounds like a lot, and a lot of people cautioned me on that, but I had a vision and I knew what I wanted to do. So we went ahead and secured a bunch of lumber from a mill that was just rough sawn lumber. And we created, out of that lumber that we had, we were able to get 31 raised beds. And I have 21 that are 3 by 10. I have 2 that are 3 by 12. And then I have a number, I think there are 8 in what I call the courtyard area that are either 2 by 4 or 2 by 8, and they all have trellises in them. And then 2 sides of the garden are lined with berries. I have my brambleberries going down this row, which are blackberries, a mystery berry, which I think are a lolly, maybe blackberries. They were already here on the property. Raspberries, and then in that back row I have the blueberries. So most people would think that's enough space to garden. You don't need anything more. But I do have a lot of extra space in here. I created the garden quite wide. Wide walkways, pathways in between the beds, going down the rows, so that I was not hindered with trying to get materials. I didn't know exactly what I would be using to go up and down the rows besides a wheelbarrow and my gorilla cart, but I didn't want to have any constrictions with getting around in the garden. So at any rate, that was fine for last year. And then we also did put in a flower bed that we were able to get just for free when my husband went to pick up something on Craigslist, and this guy was taking this old antique bed to the dump. Weathered, had already been outside and very weathered. And so we drug that home and slapped some whitewash paint on it, cut it down, and made it into a flower bed. So that brought us up to 32. And this year I wanted to put in some more beds, and my husband looked at me like I had 3 heads. And he was like, "Do you really need more beds?" And it wasn't really about an idea of needing beds as much as I wanted to put in a few more beds that were either for flowers or a little bit more of a, I guess, maybe a decorative look, or a look besides just having nothing but wood beds and trellises. I felt like the garden seems a little drab as far as just the really kind of mundane colors, and I was really wanting to add some color to it. I'm not a real colorful person. I usually stay within the neutrals, but my idea is to dabble a little bit with some color and see where that takes me. So that might be where some of the projects come in. But at any rate, let's take a look at the new beds that I put in this year, where they came from, and what my ideas are for this beds. So let's start with these round containers. Last year I did want to put some round containers out here in this front garden area, preferably for flowers. And I couldn't find anything affordable that I really wanted to spend that kind of money on. So I just bided my time and waited. And when my husband did a favor for a friend of a friend that had passed away to help go clean up their property last fall, he ran across these metal round containers that were already planned to be planters. They had already cut them down, welded these faux handles on them to give them that kind of bucket look. And so he went ahead and grabbed them, knowing that I wanted some round containers out here, and that was for free. So that was the best price available, right? And we filled them with kind of that hugelkultur method, with wood and leaves and straw and cardboard. And then we had leftover soil from when we did all of the beds and filled both of those up. And so I currently have a rhubarb in here that I don't think likes being in here, and I have sorrel in that one. My idea was to put perennials in these, and so that they would just come back every year. but I think the soil is too warm. Uh, and I kind of suspected that might be the case for these. So when I was digging in it and doing some weeding, the soil was super warm, and that sorrel, even though it's been super cold, is already going to seed. So I think I'm going to have to pop these out and go ahead and go with my original plan of doing flowers or something that can take the heat. So after getting that old antique bed that I used for flowers last year, I was on the hunt for something that I could do similarly in a couple more areas of the garden where A, I had space, and B, I wanted to do flowers to attract more pollinators to the garden. So when my sister and I were antiquing last fall, we ran across this bed at an antique store that was originally well over $100, and they were getting rid of it for 20 bucks. And it had the headboard, the footboard, and the railings that connect everything. And so I went ahead and grabbed that. And then my husband went ahead and built me this box around it, obviously to hold the soil in. And so we used some old roofing material, this galvanized stuff with some reclaimed lumber, and he was able to kind of picture frame that in and make that a box. And then we went ahead and did pick up some soil, because at this time now I'm out of soil, and we picked up some soil and some compost, but we did that same kind of method. I know this one's kind of shallow, but we did line the bottom of it with some wood and then leaves and straw and then cardboard, and then filled the rest, and then put the irrigation in there. So this is an upcoming project that I need to do. I've already got my flower seedlings ready to go, and I think I'm going to put all sunflowers in this bed. Why stop at 2 beds when you could have 3, right? So I wasn't really in the market and looking for another bed, but my sister was shopping, and when she ran into Habitat, she saw this headboard and footboard for only $15. She FaceTimed me and said, "Hey, do you want this for your garden?" And I just can't say no. So I was like, sure, I could use another bed. And then my husband went ahead and made a frame for me to obviously hold all the soil. He used some galvanized roofing scraps that he had and some framing, which was reclaimed lumber as well, and made that box for me, secured the headboard and the footboard to it. And then, of course, we added the irrigation as well. My idea for this bed is to grow sweet potatoes in it. Sweet potatoes are, an invasive vining crop, and I didn't really want to put it in something else where maybe I'd be battling that for years. So I'm going to dedicate this one to sweet potatoes, and then I think I'm going to line the headboard with some zinnias that I started, and I already put a giant marigold in here, and I'll put some smaller zinnias that I have, and then just that beautiful foliage from the sweet potatoes that will grow in the center and hopefully spill out. As far as raised beds go, this is our last one. This is number 37. In the beginning of the season, I asked my husband if he could build me a cold frame so that I could start some of my greens. And he went ahead and grabbed some of our reclaimed lumber. We already had purchased this window from Habitat last year, so he framed it basically in the size of the window, put on some hinges, a little bit of a chain there, and this horseshoe so that I can easily open and close it, not have to move the window off of it as I see some people do. And yeah, so we put some irrigation in there too, so it's been kind of hands off other than opening and closing it for freezing and whatnot. Once I harvest all of these greens out of here, which is now time to do, I'm going to go ahead and maybe use this bed. I don't know. I'm thinking about using this bed so it doesn't go unused for the season, with maybe something that can take the heat, because this area gets pretty warm from southern exposure and this wall and these windows. So I'm thinking of using it for maybe like a cantaloupe or a watermelon and see how those do, since they like the heat. The only thing I didn't want to do is have this open all year long or all season long, because I have these flower containers that I plant out. So I don't know if I'll use it or not, or maybe then just prop this window open, but I'd like to use the space since I have it. A couple of things in the garden that are not raised beds are these 2 tricycles. My husband picked them up last year at a garage sale, and they were kind of a rusty patina look, and they just kind of sat in the garden and they didn't do much of anything. And then this year I decided, well, I want some color, so picked up this spray paint and he sprayed them for me, adding a little bit of color to it, and then got these new pots in here and grabbed some flowers and kicking the season off with a little bit of color. One day when I was working in the mulch, watering some seedlings, my husband asked me why I wasn't using the workbench. He hated to see me working on the ground. And so I mentioned that, oh, well, when I water them, it all flows through and gets everything wet underneath it. So he went ahead to his what I call boneyard and grabbed some of this graded material that he cut down to fit on top of this reclaimed lumber that he used as a frame. And then that gives me the opportunity to work at this, whether it be planting and dirt and stuff following down, or watering, as in case of like these trays that have no bottoms to them, no solid bottom. I can water, and then the water will just flow through to the bottom. So it turns out to be a really great work surface for me. I can use it obviously right now. I just have these out here, everything hardening off, and I can use it for that as well. But I think I'm going to have him add another layer of this metal graded stuff down here on this framework, so that I have more space that I can use for another purpose of like drying onions and garlic on when it comes time to harvest those. While this piece may not be a very exciting addition to the garden, it is for me. I picked this up at a garage sale. It's one of those little greenhouses that has a plastic cover that goes over it, which I took off because I am using this to harden off my seedlings when I bring them out of the shed each day. And I took the plastic off so it wouldn't cook them, but at any rate, so then I have nice little shelves. I can just come out, pop all my seedlings on, and then when needed, I can move them over on the workbench in the shade. But now they are fully in sun and ready to be planted. And the last thing that's new in the garden are a couple of these structures that my husband built for me. Right now they're just sitting in the mulch as decorative, but I thought about getting a big container and having him build me something that would go at the base of these, that these would then sit in, and I could have vining sweet peas or something, vining flowers go up them. But I need more planting area, like I need a hole in my head. So right now they're going to sit there and just look like that, and or perhaps maybe sometime in a bed with beans or something growing up them. Moving on to projects, I'm going to go ahead and get this bench redone this year. I purchased it last year from an estate sale. It's a little glider bench, and it was already red and had this really nice weathered patina look to it. It was just super dirty. I washed it up and used it that way last year. But after sitting out for a whole nother season, it is looking pretty rough. So I'm going to go ahead and just give it a good sand, repaint it red, and keep that pop of color here on the garden porch. The screen door is new to the shed this year. I wanted an option to have some more ventilation, and so adding that will help with airflow. It gets pretty warm in the shed over the summer. I still need to stain it though. It looks very similar to these posts, but it doesn't have any stain on it. So I'll go ahead and stain it that same color. And then the door is used. We got it from Habitat, and it is just dirty, and the paint is chipping off from weathering from this winter, and it just needs a good coat of paint. So we'll get that done, and that'll brighten up this part of the shed. And this is the antique bed I mentioned earlier. It took a beating over the winter, which I would suspect since it is wood and it's not going to last forever, but all of the veneering lifted off. What was left on it would lifted off. And so I pulled all of that off. And I just think it needs a good sanding. It kind of adds to the patina look, but I'll just give it a good sanding and whitewash it again and see if we can get it to last a few more years. As you can see, I already have some of my flowers that I grew from seedlings. So I've got a couple of giant marigolds, some zinnia Persian, and that's a zinnia apricot. They still have quite a ways to go and grow. And the last project I have to share is painting these metal containers I showed you earlier. I did want a pop of color out here, and I originally had planned to get containers that were colored, but then of course we ended up getting these, and I do like the patina look, but they just don't add anything. So my idea is to paint them. My husband cautioned me on that they would require upkeep because it would probably flake. So I'm still leaning towards painting them. What do you think? Should I paint them? And if so, what color? Well, I think that's it for all the new things in the garden, as well as the projects I have coming up, besides all the planting I still have to do. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel so you can follow me on my garden journey. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.